Hi folks, I'm Becky. Welcome back to our podcast, Careers at a Glance, where we get to explore the career paths of everyday people to better understand what they do, how they got there, and what they have learned along the way. Today we are graciously joined by my dear mother, Connie, who worked in the career field of nursing for 46 years and is now retired and living her best life. So we were very, very excited to talk with her and kind of pick her brain about the experiences that she had and what she learned. So Mom, why don't we just go ahead and get started with you just telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the nursing career field?
My life story. I think I'm a little bit weird that way because I grew up wanting to be a nurse from the time I was 2 years old. And we laugh because my Raggedy Ann doll has stitches in her forehead that I put in as a little girl. There's a spot on her belly where I took her appendix out. And I was always taking care of her with a pretend thermometer. And I just loved the whole idea of caring for people. And so I kind of, going even through junior high and high school, prepped courses that way, the biology, the chemistry, physics, a lot of those foundational courses that you need to be prepared for college. And I did that. I am so old that back then nurses had more options. You could actually be a diploma nurse.
Like high school?
Well, no, like it was like a 3-year course, but it did not involve college or university. There was an associate degree, which was a 2-year nursing RN degree. They all were registered nursing degrees, or you could get a 4-year degree. And at that time when I started, a lot of nurses had diplomas. That was kind of the standard. And I wanted to attend a university. I began with a 2-year associate nursing degree. The nice thing about that, and I realize that education has changed dramatically. Yeah. I laugh because I went to college on a scholarship and my tuition was fully paid for. It was $200 a semester. And so I feel foolish even sharing that now because I know it's so much more expensive. But I saved, I worked in the dorms to help cover my room and board while I went through that first 2 years, and there were a lot of general ed college classes. To me, that's just part of being an educated person. It was what I wanted. The English, the history, the chemistry, yeah, it was a little interesting. And math is definitely not my forte. The classes, probably 2 classes that surprisingly helped me the most, and I think young people today would laugh to even hear that, but back in those days, 50 years ago, the only people that took typing were women that were going to be secretaries. And I took a typing class in junior high, and I wrote nursing papers on an old, not even electric, an old manual typewriter. I'm so old they didn't have computers, there was no such thing as a word processor. And so as those things evolved, I've been so grateful for that typing skill. And the other classes that I took, Latin was offered at my high school. I had no interest in Latin, but I took Spanish, and that is a Romance language that's Latin based, and amazingly a lot of the Spanish translated for medical terms, so it helped me with learning in my nursing career. The advantage for me of becoming an associate RN was I then could work and continue my education and get a bachelor's degree in nursing, which at that time, 46 years ago, was like the gold standard. Very few women got a bachelor's degree. And I really debated because the pay difference at that time was about 10 cents an hour between a 2-year RN and a 4-year RN. The difference was if you wanted to go on ever into nursing administration, if you thought you might ever, like the military was always after me. I think you could be a first lieutenant in the Army if you had a bachelor's degree. So there were some career paths that you would close by not getting your bachelor's degree. And I was young, I was single, I didn't have any dependents, so I had a much easier ride than I see married people with children juggling careers and jobs and everything, and I didn't have to do all of that. But once I had my associate degree, I could work on the weekends and go to school during the week, and I would calculate it out. I need exactly this much to pay tuition and buy books or whatever I had to do, and that meant I had to work this many shifts. And a nice thing about nursing is they're always short.
True.
There's always a job available. You can find something. Nowadays, a bachelor's degree is like minimal, entry level almost for nursing.
Yeah.
Pay, I think, has changed and improved dramatically over the years. When I started, it was mostly a women's profession.
Predominantly, yeah.
Yeah, I think there were like 2 guys in my nursing class. And I remember graduating and them sarcastically but very seriously saying, "Oh, congratulations, you now make 10 cents an hour less than the bus driver trainees in this city." And it was just over $3 an hour.
Wow.
When I graduated in 1976. And that obviously has improved significantly.
Yeah.
I did not work when I retired. By the time I retired, I've done all kinds of nursing, which has been wonderful, and I think that's one of the advantages to nursing. But by the time I retired, even at mid-level, and I wasn't in any administrative, I was working the way it suited me.
Yeah.
But making over $40 an hour. And if I had wanted the intensity of intensive care, pay there $60 to $80 an hour. And we live in a low-paying state compared to some.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I can definitely see that. Living in Idaho does have its perks, but it also has its disadvantages, especially wages are one of the big things that are hitting a lot of the area and a lot of nurses across the board. And I know times have definitely changed, and the healthcare that's provided has evolved and expanded, and there's a lot more specialized nursing now than there was when you started all those years ago. And just a plethora of areas that you can focus in. But where was one of your favorite areas to work in?
Oh my goodness. I love kids, and pediatrics has always been my love. When I graduated with my 2-year, my associate degree, where I knew I was still going to go to school, because I thought, if I stop, I'll never, for 10 cents an hour, I'll never come back. So I'm just going to stay poor and a struggling, starving student. And I worked for a nursing float pool on the weekends, and they would just assign me, that was adult nursing, hospital nursing, and some private duty nursing, to make enough. And then when I graduated with my bachelor's degree in nursing, I was hired as the head nurse at the Deaf and Blind School in a western state, and had a staff, and it was a residential facility for students, deaf and blind students, and that was an incredible experience. I learned to sign a little bit. They all knew it was Nurse Connie, Nurse Connie, and I loved that. Then I did some volunteer work in South America. Again, mostly working with children. a lot of, in the schools, teaching sanitation, basic sanitation, why you should wash your hands, why you need screens on windows to protect from flies that carry all kinds of diseases, and promoting immunizations and good nutrition. And I really enjoyed that because it made a difference. We saved lives, people that were struggling, either starving or so malnourished that they were dying of sanitation issues. And to be able to just, knowledge is power. And to be able to teach those simple things, and I had enough Spanish that I could kind of butcher my way through it and we could communicate. Then I returned, and about 1980, 81, newborn intensive care was just a brand new field, and I came back and worked at Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake, and that is still my all-time favorite. In the preemie ICU, very specialized, and a dramatic pay increase with those expertise skills. And I think I was spoiled. I loved that. By that time, I was married. I had children of my own, and I did notice it was harder when I had my own children because I felt it more acutely.
Yeah.
Being a mom, I mean, to see a family grieve over a child and have them not make good progress, or to have to take a little body to the morgue. Those are hard things.
Yeah.
They really are. But that's probably my favorite. We moved to Idaho, and that ended my work at Primary Children's, and I, for a while, was a stay-at-home mom by choice, because you were here and your siblings, and that was a full-time job. Even not being employed as a nurse, I used my nursing. I was always amazed. Yes, that absolutely has to have stitches, son. Or as long as you can keep something down, we don't need to go to the emergency room for dehydration. Just things that I knew as a nurse that I'd watch friends go, will you look at their ears? Do we need to get into the doctor? And so I used nursing, even though I wasn't gainfully employed. Later on, as the kids got a little older, I did home health, which allowed me to vary my schedule to suit the kids' schedules. If I wanted off to be there for a soccer game or a school concert, I could. And that was a positive experience. I've taught CNAs.
Yeah.
I really enjoy teaching. I think the saddest thing about it is the pay was about a quarter of what I could make in any other nursing field. Just a huge
pay cut.
Yeah, and I'm sad for the way our society treats educators. I don't know how else to explain that because the skills were just as valuable and as important. And then I've done some geriatric nursing, which is a world unto itself, and I think sometimes harder for me. Pediatrics is so full of hope, and there's a whole life ahead, and a lot of times geriatrics, it's a time of loss. Aging to age is to lose strength, independence, autonomy, loved ones, and to help somebody cope with those things gracefully and still have dignity and a quality of life that meets their satisfaction is a challenge. It's hard. And then I ended my career again in Central America, doing, of all things, psychiatric nursing and some counseling. And that was a whole new experience to me. And there's just a myriad of fields and locations. And I mean, I had friends that went straight into administration. I remember having a friend that was a nurse with the Women, Infant, and Children program. And she never did anything that most of us think of as nursing. She never wore a stethoscope. She didn't do any of that. but she could plan a menu or do a calorie count for a premature infant that was struggling and teach moms. There's just so many things that you can do with a nursing degree.
Oh, that is beautifully spoken, and quite the varying areas of
You can
expertise.
go anywhere. And nowadays, there's so many master's programs. You can go into administration, you can become a nurse practitioner, and function pretty independently with a good physician to oversee and prescribe. I mean, that field wasn't even open when I started, and I think for me that would be a little intimidating. I like to know what to do, but I don't like to have to make the life and death decisions. It's like, okay, doc, what do we do?
No, that makes sense. So that was a beautiful description of your career and all the things and places that you've gone and practiced nursing, and you shared some of your favorite experiences and your positive experiences. Would you be able to kind of elaborate on some of the negative aspects that you've seen?
I don't want to discourage anybody. I think our world is more challenging than what I faced as a 20-year-old brand new nurse. There's less respect for authority. People are less likely to say, well, you're the nurse, you know what's best. They'll say, well, this is what Google says, or this is what my neighbor said, or my friend said, or I don't want to do that. One of the hardest things for me, particularly, well, both in infant and adult nursing, is I feel really strongly we all have to take personal responsibility for our own health. And there's a sign in my dentist's office that says there is nothing the dentist can do to make up for what the patient won't do. As in, if you don't brush and floss, you're going to reap those consequences.
Yeah.
And that's true not only in dental health, it's true it's in some cases in our mental health, our emotional health, and our physical health.
Yeah.
If we're not going to eat right, if we're not going to exercise, if we're going to pay the price, I can't make up for maybe a patient who comes in and has a baby, delivers a baby with fetal alcohol syndrome. It's like, if you're going to choose to drink, there's a consequence.
Yeah.
And those are hard, emotionally difficult. And I retired before the COVID explosion, but I have friends in healthcare professions who have talked about how frustratingly difficult it is to try to encourage people one way or another to make good decisions. And there's been a lot of suffering and a lot of fear and a lot of death. And as nurses, there's a whole generation my age retiring and not a lot of replacement, not enough.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to be part of that white tsunami, that gray-haired group that's going to need more nursing care as I age. And there are fewer young people. There are more options for careers for young people now. And I think that can be difficult and frustrating. And it's hard to watch people suffer, especially it's difficult when you feel like it could have been prevented. It could have been prevented. Becky and I were involved in an automobile accident. You were too. And I totaled our car. We were very lucky. We were broadsided, and we were very lucky to live through it. And she came out with 2 pencil-thin bruises on her thigh where the car seat had restrained her. But she was fine. I had some bumps and bruises, but I was fine.
You had a lot more than that.
Well, we were buckled in, and that's why we lived. And I mean, the paramedics said that, oh my gosh, you should be dead. But if I hadn't chosen to put you in your car seat that day, you would have been dead. And if I hadn't been buckled in, I would have been dead. And it's frustrating to see people suffer health consequences when they won't put on whatever kind of figurative seatbelt is needed for their own self-care. So I think that's a down thing. I think people that are drawn to healthcare professions, especially nursing, we are fixers and helpers and we like to make everything better, and you have to be really attuned to your own self-care and your own stress level, what you can cope with in your life at certain times. For example, as a young nurse, boy, I was gung-ho. I could work those night shifts. I loved the drama of the NICU, the high, running the arrests, dealing with all these crises. By the time I was in my 60s, it's like, I'm less excited to work night shifts.
Yeah.
And I don't want to work in an ICU anymore because I just don't want to deal with that much drama. And it's lovely to have a career that allows you to do that, but you also have to be self-aware. And that was a nice thing when I did home health. Maybe I only want to work 10 hours a week. I don't want to work 40 hours a week. So to have those kinds of shifts so that you can have a life balance. And that's different for everybody, and I think it's different at different seasons of your life.
Yes, very much so.
So does that describe the downs?
I think so.
We are a more lawsuit-prone society than we were 50 years ago. And I have made nursing mistakes. I've seen medical mistakes happen. I have been involved in one lawsuit. And it's incredibly traumatic and stressful. And you have to, I think, always keep in the back of your mind that learning to document well and knowing what the standards are and the procedures are that are current for your community, that's crucial. And in some ways you have to develop a little bit of a tough skin.
Yeah.
I think it works really, really well to be open and honest and candid with your patients and their families. And sometimes it helps to know when to just keep your mouth shut. So those can be downsides, I guess. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
What comes to mind when you're talking about the complexity of healthcare now is the book, The Checklist Manifesto, and I'm blanking on the name of the author at this moment, but I actually have 2 copies of this book. But he's a doctor who has essentially, he's written a couple different books, but this book outlines how healthcare has evolved and become so complicated that these simple checklists are lifesavers in that regard, because as they've found new diseases and all of the complexities of that, there's so many steps that fall into place for each one of those millions of scenarios that you could go through. And he talked about a child drowning and how, how many years ago, like, if they're down, there's nothing you can do and you can't revive them. Well, now if everything's in place and it goes perfectly, if they've been under the water for an extended period of time, there's still a chance if you go da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da at the perfect time with the perfect people in place to save them. And that doesn't always happen, and it has to be so many different, like, it's so vast that it's just, it's immense. And people, I feel like a lot of people, I don't even understand how complex the different specialties can be. And someone losing someone in that scenario, they're not going to understand that there was one thing that fell out of place and so many people might die for that, even if it's 1%, and they're still doing the best they can. And so I think no matter what, there's still going to be errors, human errors, and just things didn't happen. They didn't come together in the perfect timing to make it happen.
Or bodies don't respond the way, oh, this should happen. I remember one of my early patients in the newborn ICU. You watch, they said, this baby had a congenital heart defect. When we give this, you will see this, and the baby will turn pink, and it's just, you're gonna love this, it's so exciting. And the drug was administered, and the baby went into arrest. And that was not supposed to happen. It was not the way the body should have responded, and I was glad that newbie me wasn't in charge, because a lot of people with much more expertise dealt with that. But there's not guarantees, and I think we live in a society where people want guarantees, and that can be difficult. That can be so hard in medicine and nursing. You can't guarantee.
Yeah, I think there's always that 1% chance that you're going to lose a patient, but I definitely think that you've had such a fabulous career doing this, that slightly more negative has been nothing in comparison to the positives that you've seen and the impacts that you've been able to make in not only the United States but in South America as well.
Yeah, not everybody goes home or leaves vastly improved or dramatically better, but I have learned there can be tremendous satisfaction even in, that when it sounds, I have helped you die gracefully with minimal pain and maximum comfort. And that can be a very positive interaction. I wouldn't have understood that as a 20-year-old, but I really did in my 60s as I watched people walk that path. And it's like, I may not be able to fix everything, and that's a frustration for me as a helper fixer person, but maybe I can help you through it. And I think our society, we get so caught up in technology and our phones and our computers, and it's like, could I just sit next to you and hold your hand while you're scared tonight or while you're hallucinating? 67-year-old patient with Parkinson's disease, and she put her call light on and had me come in the middle of the night. She said, there is a man with an assault rifle and he's climbing in my bathroom window and he's going to rape me. This was so vivid to her. She had mental issues from her Parkinson's disease. It was totally not her fault. She did have a bathroom in her room, but there were no windows in it.
Yeah.
And at one point, because I said, let me check for you, I'm trying to establish her reality. And I said, there's no one in here. And she said, I know you're right. I know he can't be real because you just walked right through him. But he's still standing there looking at me. And it's like, let me just sit with you and hold your hand and let's leave a light on. It's not always children that are afraid of the dark. It's just hard. And that's the most simple kind of nursing there is. It did not involve hanging IVs or doing elaborate procedures or anything. Just simple kindness. And those kinds of things make a difference for people in their lives. And that brings tremendous satisfaction, even though I couldn't change the course of her disease.
Thank you for sharing that experience. That is a very tender experience. Before we wrap things up, I kind of want to touch on just another little avenue of what advice you would share to someone that might be looking at pursuing a career in nursing.
Not everybody has a dream like I did. In fact, like I said, I was weird. I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. But some people fall into it or stumble into it or find out, oh, I really like this one aspect. And I mean, there's everything that you can go any direction that you want. And you can take those nursing skills. I have friends who are now fitness and nutrition instructors with a nursing background, and others who have gone into sports medicine and wrapping and taping and those kinds of things. So you can go any direction. I think it would be to give it your best shot. I don't consider myself particularly bright. I was a good student and I memorized easily, and I knew how to study, but I had to study.
Yeah.
I had a nursing friend who didn't, and I hated her because it came so easy for her. I'd be up there memorizing physiology and she would be out sunbathing, and her test scores would be higher than mine. So there are people both ways, but I think if you're willing to apply yourself to it, one thing I think that I see more of nowadays that wasn't a requirement when I entered nursing was you have to log so many hours as a CNA, a certified nursing assistant,
Okay.
as a prerequisite to apply for entrance into a nursing program. And that wasn't on my list. And I have known outstanding CNAs that love patient care, and it is hands-on, bed baths, turning, positioning, toileting. They are really good at it. In all honesty, it is not my favorite thing. I do not love bedpans. Sorry. Hope nobody's traumatized by that, but that was not my favorite thing. And I remember one of the CNA courses that I was teaching, the students said, oh, we have to learn how to fold all this linen, and we have to learn how to rinse bedpans, and this is nursing. And I wanted to say, if you choose that because you are comfortable and good at that, yes, that's nursing. To my mind, that is the most difficult and in some ways least rewarding aspect of nursing. But you can make a different choice. Learn this as a basic so you appreciate the staff that you work with. But I remember telling them very candidly, I almost never empty a bedpan as the charge nurse. And this will not be your career. I've never folded linen in my nursing career life in 46 years. There's laundry people to do that, and they enjoy that. That's their job. So to not be discouraged by wading through so much. And I've worked with some outstanding licensed professional nurses. They're not registered nurses, but they are excellent. And I remember, particularly in home health, there was a lot of paperwork and administrative work that comes with being the RN. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like that, getting everything organized and making sure all the dots are on and the T's are crossed, and making sure my patient's getting the very best care that I can come up with. I had an LPN nursing friend who our supervisor was strongly encouraging. Get your RN, you'd be so good. She was a fantastic LPN. If I ever needed wound care, I want her, because hands-on she was so good. And her comment was, I hate paperwork. I don't ever want to be an RN. And so know yourself, and if you discover in your training that, gag me, I never have to deal with this or whatever. I did a short stint in surgery and realized that the part that I liked the very best was talking to the patient and family just prior to their procedure and after they woke up. And I didn't get as excited about dealing with an inert body and handing over instruments, but I had friends that loved that. Yeah. And so the nice thing is you can choose, and to just be really candid, and I guess like I just did, I really don't like bedpans, and I would not choose that path if I knew I would be required to do that a lot. So you can go differently, and you can be trained in whatever specialty suits you.
No, I think that's great advice. I think a lot of people look at, from my experience working at a hospital, a lot of people that worked at the hospital had issues with the float pool, which is essentially you don't have a home base and you just float around to different departments and fill in. And typically new nurses or someone that just started at the hospital kind of fill in that gap until they find their permanent, like full-time position there. But I think that could be a great way to explore the different areas and specialties and dip your toes in and find out what you're just drawn to and what just fills your cup up.
And you know, one other negative, sorry,
No,
but it
you're
made me
fine.
think of it. Not to end on a negative note, but, and I did not encounter this so much, but I have read about and heard from other nurses. There was this saying that I think unfortunately still exists, which was, nurses eat their young. And I've heard others talk about, well, I'm the nurse who's been here 30 years and I know how this should run, and you are the young, stupid, inexperienced, and they are treated very, very cruelly, really cruelly. How dare you not know how to do whatever procedure? How dare you need help starting this IV? What is your problem that you can't do that med? And in that way, I guess, a little bit of a tough skin. My bachelor's degree is from the University of Utah, which was a superb school, still is, but it was like one of the top 5 in the nation when I graduated 100 years ago. And so I think I got more opportunities as a student to see things that someone graduating from maybe a smaller community program or a small hospital might not have. Mm-hmm. And I guess maybe brace yourself in case you meet people that are unkind, because I hate to think that nurses would be that way. We need to be more supportive of each other, and I think a lot of facilities are reaching out and really trying hard, because it can be scary. I mean, I remember the first time I went down and had to put in a Foley catheter, you know, and it's really nice to have a mentor or a supportive system, and most facilities are reaching out that way. And I think if you inadvertently find yourself in a toxic area, to seek help, because that would be really negative. And I think it's okay to say, I'm nervous, will you come with me while I do this, or will you coach me through this? And there can be a lot of comfort and a lot of support, and it makes you a better nurse.
Yeah, I had a friend who just finished up nursing a couple years ago, right before the pandemic, or right in the middle of it, and she did her clinical rotations, which is part of the nursing program to essentially get your hand-on practical experience, and she finished that at the local hospital where I used to work, and they hired her from that because she had experience in that department, and they saw her and she knew that she liked that department and had found that connection, and she's been working there for over a year plus through one of the hardest times it is to be in the healthcare profession, because there is so much pressure and the pandemic and budget cuts and understaffing, and it's just a whole mess. But she found her spot and developed that relationship just from schooling, and it's a great, I think, even though there might always be petty people in that area, I think there are those leaders, those nurses, whoever they might be, that have that leadership quality, that want to take you under their wing and just show you the ropes and let you go, because eventually, just like you said, they're going to turn around and need care from whoever they're teaching. And I think it's a very hardworking, and
it's an honorable, trusted profession. It really is. And you kind of want to not do anything that would tarnish that reputation. I think Florence Nightingale had the best perspective, and her comment was, put yourself first. You can't be anything for anybody else if you haven't taken care of yourself. And I think for nursing, that's the best philosophy, whatever that need is, and it changes over a lifetime and career transitions, but keep yourself first, that you are in good shape to be able to reach out and help.
Well, I think that is a very good way to end this podcast. I want to thank you so much, Mom, for
Thanks, Becky.
taking the time to share your experiences, not only with me, but for everybody else out there. Then I'm sure that you will have an impact on future nurses.
I hope. Choose. It's a wonderful, wonderful career, and there's infinite numbers of options.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we will leave it there and wish you all the best. And if you want to go into nursing, I say go all in for it and have a good career. Maybe you go for 50 years. Bye, guys.